Welcome into Point Blank, brought to you by Fitz Roofing. I'm Brandon Strange, joined by ESPN Houston's Joel Blank at the press box. Joel, welcome in. Astros owner Jim Crane saying that the Astros were planning to be aggressive at the deadline. Subsequently, James Click said they're in the market for bullpen help. I think being a buyer at the deadline is interesting because I think a lot of Astros observers, at least the media and the fans, were thinking maybe we were headed towards a soft rebuild with this team, but that doesn't seem to be the indication from the top. Second interesting thing I saw was a tweet from Baseball Reference that has the Astros as the most probable AL team to make the World Series. Joel, I'm just going to ask you straight up, make sense of this for me.
So here's a little something to read between the lines. Normally when Vegas speaks and they give you odds, that means they know something that maybe we don't. So from the standpoint of the odds coming out and the Astros having better odds than the Indians in second, or better yet, the Yankees, who were the overall favorite from the preseason, maybe that tells you Justin Verlander doesn't need Tommy John surgery. Maybe that tells you that the 20 or so pitches that he threw, that his arm might be better off than we think. And maybe in September, when they need to make a final push or get ready for the playoffs, you're going to have your ace back. And boy, wouldn't that be an ace in the hole when they needed it most. So maybe that's encouraging news. From the Jim Crane standpoint, it's interesting because that tells me they're going to finish the season. All we've been worried about is seeing all these different positive cases of corona and worried about, well, are we going to be able to get all the games in and finish the season? And why would anybody want to make a move and be a buyer when you might buy a guy that's only got a contract through the rest of the year and then you don't finish the season and it was all for naught and you gave up prospects? So it tells me a lot of positive things. If you're a baseball fan and an Astros fan, it tells me from the Crane perspective, we're going to finish what we started, and therefore we're going to have an end of the season that the Astros may be playing in for a very long time. And based on the odds makers, it tells me that some of these injuries and some of these guys that have been out, they like that the personnel that the Astros still have, and if healthy, they should be competing for a chance to win another World Series title. And that's a great thing if you're an Astros fan.
Well, in order to make a trade, you have to have trade equity. And so I'm looking at the team, and they're pretty thin right now. And combined with the fact that there really is no effective farm system right now because of the state of the world. And so I'm wondering, who do they give up, and can they get a real piece back?
So there's two guys on my radar. They've been on my radar on the radio show, and we've talked about them at least in some length. And that in the first case is Zack Greinke. Look, stock is never going to be higher for a guy later in his career than what Zack Greinke is giving you right now. And he's not one of those major league pitchers that has an above average fastball that can still blow guys away and can be really intelligent with the way he gets people out. And in the playoffs, it seems to be that you need to be a little bit overpowering. But you know what? He's been effective. He was great in Game 7 until AJ gave him the hook. And this year, he has been absolutely fantastic, including pitches in the 50s and the 60s. That's miles an hour, fellas. So that means that if you ever want to get rid of Zack Greinke, now would be the time, and especially because if you want this team to stay competitive going forward into the future, you need to have money. And no matter who you would get back in return, the bigger thing is you would save a ton of money that could help you to keep George Springer, to keep Michael Brantley, maybe even keep Yuli Gurriel and keep you relevant. And from the other standpoint, a guy that, look, he's been one of the most highly touted prospects in Astros history, Kyle Tucker. He hasn't done it on the major league level, but guess what he's been doing lately? He's been leading the team in home runs and RBIs and all the things that you need to see and hear. So maybe that's the guy. Maybe Kyle Tucker's a guy that people go, hey, I really think I can build my franchise around him. I know it hasn't worked out great in Houston, but I think I can do something with him. In the process, I may be willing to give you a veteran or two that maybe gives you some bullpen help and another bat in the lineup that can really push you over the top for this year and maybe a year or two going down future. So you're not looking big picture with Tucker. But guess what? Between the finances and the fact you still have plenty of starting pitching, because I'm hearing 10 days or less on Jose Urquidy, maybe you don't need a Zack Greinke, and you can afford to give up a Tucker if it means you get a solid bat and a good relief pitcher for the rest of this season and maybe next.
Joel, since we're on YouTube right now, I'm going to ask you to put on your tinfoil hat for me and follow me down a conspiracy rabbit hole. But before we do that, why don't you give us a word from our video sponsors at Fitz Roofing?
Yeah, guys, look, I want to tell you, Fitz Roofing's been loyal to the people of Houston, Texas, and they continue to be loyal to them by offering out the best prices and the best quality products that they use when they do the roof, whether it be for your business or your home. It's a free, no obligation inspection. It costs you absolutely nothing. All you got to do is call them 832-521-3001. They come to you. They tell you what they can do. They go back on their way. Telling you when I say this, best ratings, best products, best service. They do it all. Fitz Roofing, making a difference, one home at a time.
Joel, when the Justin Verlander injury first happened, it was initially reported by Chandler Rome that he was going to be done with Tommy John surgery, which meant this season and next season were basically done. JV immediately came back and said, no, that's not true. There were some in the media and just kind of some speculation that perhaps Verlander was putting up a smoke screen and kind of hiding what the true nature of his injury was to, allow the Astros to maneuver in the trade market, because the other teams would kind of, take advantage of the situation, not really give the Astros value if they knew the Astros were in dire need of help. So that was one theory that ran out there. So if we follow that narrative, which, who knows whether that's true or not, but if we follow that narrative down this conspiratorial rabbit hole here, is it possible that James Click and Jim Crane are also putting up a smokescreen and what they're saying their true intention is at this trade deadline? Is that possible?
It is possible. And look, it's always a card game. And between general managers and agents, there's a lot of information that people want to hear or they want you to hear, might not necessarily be the truth. But if it helps them in any way, shape, or form and it benefits them, then that's part of the game and that's part of the poker face, and that's why you do what you do. James Click is a smart guy. We know he's a numbers guy, but he's also a guy that knows if he's going to have longevity in Houston, Texas, then he hasn't made that one signature move yet that is going to make or break his existence in this city. That, which he doesn't want it to be, could very well be the end of an era of Houston Astros baseball, because you are rebuilding, because you are starting over, because your guys are going to leave, whether it be Springer and all the guys I mentioned, or Verlander's done and so is Osuna, and now the bottom is falling out. So I think there's a lot of strategizing with the way information is placed out there, but I think that you've got a really smart baseball guy in Click and a guy that is aggressive but is successful at business in Jim Crane, and they're going to make sure they do what's in the best interest of this franchise going forward. So I think I say all that to say this. Look, I think that maybe they did set it up so that they don't get someone that's going to try and take them to the cleaners, but I think that they're also going to be open to two different facets before the trade deadline, and that is building this team for a run this year, or being smart enough to get some pieces that can help them for the next 3 to 5 years, especially because they're going to get a pretty good indication of who's staying and who's going and who's willing to take money that makes financial sense for them as they continue with the franchise.